I think there's one thing you can never question with this City side is their mentality. They are incredible. They want to win every single trophy. They're always in it. This is a moment for them where he's going to really find out about this squad. One of the first times we've really seen it where they're under real pressure, Steph, where there are questions being asked of them. Obviously, injuries don't help. Can they do something incredibly special without one of their talisman, one of the best players in European football? They're the questions they're going to ask. They're still going to be in contention, make no mistake, because of the quality they have. But this is certainly one of the most difficult times they've had. I can't think of a more difficult or challenging time for Man City or Pep in the Premier League.
Not really at this stage in the season. I think when you've seen glimpses of what City could potentially do, and even the Southampton game at home, you're thinking, OK, this could be a lot of goals, and it's 1-0, and Southampton probably had a goal that they probably deserved in terms of it was disallowed. But I think for me, as a manager, he has to come out and he has to protect his players. I think for the players, especially in that first half, they really brought what Manchester City style is. They were really dominant with the ball. And I think it's them fine margins, especially in this league when you're playing against the best teams. You have to be able to put them chances away. And especially at the other end, you've got to defend and you've got to keep clean sheets. And there's not been enough of them this season. So I think once he does get his players back, and it's no way an excuse because there's a lot of quality on that pitch for Manchester City. But I think when he does, it's able to rotate and kind of manage the Champions League situation as well.
The other point is that his contract's up in the summer and there's still a lot of discussion. We don't know what's being said to players internally, but certainly from the outside, there's a lot of discussion about whether or not that could be the end of his time at Manchester City. And obviously that would be his decision to make. Can that uncertainty have an effect on the players and on the performances, do you think?
Absolutely, Kelly. I mean, the elephant in the room, of course, we know about the charge. That has to have a bit of an effect. You can't not be a player and you don't turn a blind eye to things like that. You know that it's going to have consequences on your career and everything that goes with it. So they're all elements that are going to affect the players. Is the manager going to stay? I mean, only he knows that. And will that affect, obviously, what you're thinking? I don't think that they give you that kind of excuse, but it certainly doesn't help, with someone like Pep. But what he'll, more than anything else, they've just got to get everyone fit. So once he gets his best team in place, then you can ask more, because at the moment there's a lot more questions and answers, because I don't think right now he can pick his best 11, and that's where the problems are coming as well.
I think probably that's a frustrating from his point. He probably has an idea of what his best 11 would be, but I think in terms of Pep's future, I mean, he's been an absolute unbelievable manager for Manchester City, and I hope he stays personally. But I think as players, if there's a potential of him going at the end of the season, why aren't you using that as much as you possibly can as a player to help develop? And that's the mindset that I kind of think about, is that if you have somebody that can help and improve you as a player, then put absolutely everything. And I'm not saying the boys haven't done that today, because they will have. It's just not happening for them at the moment. But I think in terms of mindset, use him while he's there, improve yourself and learn about the game, because there's no one better than him.
When you look at Manchester City's injury list, Oscar Bob, Ruben Diaz, Jack Grealish, John Stones, Rodri, the big one, and the record without Rodri, there's a really significant difference there in terms of the ratio of games that Manchester City are losing without Rodri, which is a third of them, compared to 2.6 of them with him. Now, it's different sample size and all those kind of caveats that you can bring into place. But you're trying to replace a Ballon d'Or winning player, and you're having to do that without... Maybe John Stones might come into that position, but he's injured. And then you have defensive injuries. John Stones might cover for Ruben Diaz if he were injured. But, there are injuries that are affecting different parts of the team specifically.
Yeah, we all know what Rodri brings to Manchester City. I think he is really the glue that holds the team together in terms of getting the ball off the back four, starting attacks, his range of passing, but also that ability in defence to be able to cover the ground. I think that's something that we don't talk about with Rodri, is that he's able to read the player, he's able to kind of fill in gaps for if Ruben Diaz, John Stones gets pulled out of position, the full-backs do. And we
Set pieces, both boxes,
yeah, of course.
goals.
And he's adding goals to his game. But I think for me, it's a bit harsh on Kovacic, because I think he's played really well this season. But I think maybe we have changed the way that we have played in terms of maybe kind of altering the style, because there's not such a pivotal player in Rodri being in there. But look, there's a lot of players that can kind of step up and fill them gaps. And he's a big miss, and obviously the record shows for itself. But he's not going to be available for the whole season, so it's about adjusting and yeah, there's nothing else you could do.
Absolutely. I also think you have to... Because he's a unicorn. I've called it... Because you cannot... you can't find a player to do what he does. Steph said it very eloquently, perfectly. But I also think what they've left themselves a bit short is in forward areas, where today, for example, it goes to 2-1 and you bring on Alvarez. It makes a real difference. They miss him. Oscar Bob, who was flying in pre-season, picked up a really bad injury, I think a leg break or something like that. They're the details that you need as well. And players, they sold a really good player in Alvarez, and I don't really think they replaced him. Like, Savino's going to create goals, but he's not an out-and-out goal scorer. Someone is just going to take the pressure off of Haaland if he's not perhaps scoring. I thought first half he was exceptional. So they've left themselves short in a few areas as well. So it isn't just Rodri. They've also, some of that has been self-inflicted, because you should have, once you sell a player for that much money, you should make sure you've got someone that could make that difference as well.
Phil Foden hasn't hit form, and we're all wanting him to be getting back to where he was to be rightfully the Premier League Player of the Season last year. And I think what you say about Haaland, it's like, can we take the pressure off him? He's always going to score goals if you give him chances, but sometimes you need other people when he's been marked by 2-3 players to kind of pop up in them areas, and City certainly had them chances today.
Kyle Walker talked about the fact that even with the players who are out, the ones who are being picked aren't necessarily in form. And he also, to return to that point about fatigue, said that, they couldn't match Brighton when they stepped up the energy. Is that partly, do you think, explained by older players within their squad? They've played 10 players aged 29 or over. It's up there comparable with West Ham. Do you think that they could do with freshening that up, with bringing in younger players with perhaps fresher legs?
Well, they were doing all right when they were 28 plus. They won the title. So, I mean, it's a difficult, that's just right now, what we do in the media, we're all looking for what's the answer? Why are they off it? Pep touched on it. They've lost 2 Premier League games. For anybody else, it's not going to mean that much. But to Manchester City, it feels like a bit of a crisis. And how they're going to bounce back, we're going to very quickly find out. I don't know, I always try to think as a player, when you had an international break, was that a good or a bad thing? Because almost you want to keep going, but it might help him just to get players fit and ready again.
It gives him 10 days to get the likes of John Stones, Ruben Diaz back into the squad. Obviously, Doku, you're hoping Grealish is going to come back in. But I think in terms of age, it's a thing where I'm like, OK, these are experienced players and they know how to play these games every week. But I think we're not stupid enough to know that Man City are probably going to have to go through a little bit of a transition period in terms of players that they're going to bring in. There's a lot of players that are potential one-year contracts that might end up. But I think for me, it's totally about players' form, and probably a lot of players that have not really had a pre-season. But for me, I'm not going to stand here and say there's excuses, because at Manchester City, there's a level to be playing to, and there's expectation, like Jamie mentioned. They never, ever really lose 2 games in a row in the Premier League.
And the big games keep on coming for Manchester City, because they are involved across all the different competitions. We've got a game coming up against Tottenham, which is a very specific type of challenge. We've seen in Tottenham's games this season how dangerous they could be. Then they've got final. Then it's Liverpool on the 1st of December at Anfield. Nottingham Forest, who are now up towards the champion, or are now in the Champions League places, and so have been something of a surprise outfit this season, but can potentially cause their own problems. Crystal Palace, and then away at Juventus on December the 11th. There's some tricky games in there for them.
Well, certainly. I mean, normally, if City were in great form, Steph, we say, God, they're great fixtures to have. You've got Tottenham at home. Tottenham have been a bit of a nemesis for a while with them. They have found it quite difficult. They've had some really good results and really difficult ones in Champions League, even going back a few years. So that will be, it's never an easy game. Feyenoord at home, OK, Liverpool away, that could be one where if Liverpool carry on the form that they are, I think they're winning at the moment, that's going to be one where you've got to try and get something out of that game, and you might need to go there and win. Forest at home, again, that's a difficult game because they're playing so well, but who knows what happens by December the 4th. The other games all look difficult when you're not winning or playing well, but you have to take each game in isolation. And the first one that Pep will be looking at is, once he comes back, can he have his back four of almost like Guardiola, Diaz, Akanji and Kyle Walker, and then you've got a bit of stability, because at the moment it feels like teams are making it too easy. They get too many chances against this Man City side.
I think the thing that sticks out for me is the next 2 games are at home. I think the 4 defeats that City have had in the row today has been all away from home. I think at the Etihad they've got an unbelievable record in front of the home crowd, and I think these next 10 days is a moment of reflection. Players to go on international duty, players to get back fit, but there's no doubt that these runner games are going to excite Pep and the rest of the team because they know that they have to win as many as they possibly can. And obviously, the obvious game is Liverpool away. That's going to be so good in terms of what happens tonight with Liverpool v Villa. And yeah, we always know what happens in them games. It's always fiery and fast tempo.
Yeah, and I think right now, normally at this time, we still say City are going to win the title. I think this is the first time in a few years where people are going, they're not the favourites. They're not. The favourites are probably Liverpool right now, if you looked at it. Can Arsenal do something?
By right now, do you mean exactly in this minute? Because by the time we come back from the first lot of the games after the international
I just think, even because of the injuries that they've got and one specific injury, and I think unless maybe in January they can maybe bring in another striker, to replace what Alvarez did. I think that normally they're the outstanding favourite. I think right now it's almost like who can go on a run. And Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City, it feels like it's almost an even game with them. But normally we're saying City are the outstanding favourites. I don't know if you agree with that, Steve.
No, I think Liverpool, we can't really argue with how they've played this season so far under the new manager, and they seem to have momentum, whether it's away from home or at home at Anfield, and they just seem very efficient in everything that they do from a defensive point of view, and also going forward. They've got Mo Salah, who's in frightening form, but also other players picking up goals when necessary. So I think it was always going to be Liverpool, Manchester City, Arsenal. You can't write Arsenal off either, I think, in terms of Arsenal probably going through a similar period to what Manchester City are now. But look, these teams are going to be fighting right to the very end.